We are. Hello and welcome, Presbyterian Peace Fellowship campers. We are glad that you are here for a special teach-in on Native American sovereignty and human rights in the PCUSA. My name is Timothy Watring, the moderator of the General Assembly group of the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship. And so it is my honor to do tech today and also to pass it over to Anthony.
Thank you, Timothy. Thank you, Timothy and Emily Brewer and everybody at the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship for offering us the chance to talk a little bit today about the pressing issues that are up before the General Assembly regarding the Native American reports that have been taken up and will be discussed sometime over this next weekend. One of the first things I want to emphasize at the outset of this teach-in, well, before I get into the content, again, I want to thank all of those who are viewing now and those who are viewing later or watching the video. Thank you for joining and for tuning in. One of the important things I want to note at the outset is that there's over 3 centuries of history of the Presbyterian Church with Native people and working of contact, of conversation, of oftentimes conflict, as we'll see in some of the things we talk about. It's important to know that in this teach-in, we can't get into the depths and many of the nuances of this history in the 30 minutes we have. This teach-in is really an orientation to the Native American reports and the urgent recommendations coming before the General Assembly of this term. We will offer some resources and actions toward the end that will hopefully prepare and help to contextualize both this conversation and what will be discussed at General Assembly. And we hope that you will take some time to really read through the reports and all the reports that are coming forward and the many resources that are available. The first thing we want to do is recognize, generally when we start an event, we start with the land acknowledgement. Because we're all virtual here, first of all, I want to recognize that the land every Presbyterian church USA is built upon is the homeland of Native American people and nations. Presbyterian churches are, for many of its members, places of worship and connection. But for many Native peoples, they have also been sites of violence and erasure. In some cases, Presbyterian churches were established in Native territory in acts of international diplomacy between Native nations and Presbyterian clergy who were acting together with the US government. So these were often treaties or agreements between Native nations and Euro-American settlers. These were often supposed to be, or these were supposed to be, reciprocal covenant relationships of trust and respect, but often they have turned out to be one relationships where the more Native people gave, the more Christian settlers took, with little or no recompense and with little remorse oftentimes. In order for the Presbyterian Church USA to exist, Native people have often been defrauded of their land, uprooted from their homes, and separated from families. And just as detrimentally, often our spiritual practices have been outlawed, our languages suppressed, and our cultures proscribed. By whom? Well, by this church's reformed forebearers who believed they were God's elect, the new Israel in the quote unquote new world. People who believed that providence brought them to this land, just as Yahweh had led the Hebrew people out of Egypt into Canaan. People who believed that the only covenant that really mattered was the covenant that gave them the mandate to Christianize this land and purge it of indigenous peoples they considered the New World Canaanites, along with their quote unquote heathen practices. These were also people who believed they were agents of the sovereign God and thereby justified in erecting colonies, states, nations within indigenous space, and utterly disregarding the territorial, spiritual, and physical sovereignties of indigenous peoples and nations. These were Presbyterian forebearers and Reformed forebearers who appealed to the scriptures, read through the lens of the Reformed creeds and confessions as their theological and legal framework for making claims to the land, bodies, and spirits of indigenous peoples. This was considered their mission, and this land was considered a mission field. In fact, they believed they were enacting the Great Commission. So the Presbyterian Church USA is not only deeply implicated in these acts of territorial displacement and physical, cultural, and spiritual genocide, the church has also been one of its principal architects of all of these programs. And unfortunately, this is not past tense. As in American society as a whole, there continues to be a deep aversion among many in the Presbyterian Church to USA to telling the true and the full story of how the church got here. We often prefer to tell the story of the faithful Christians who have filled the pews and made it possible for many of us to worship freely, while ignoring the stories of the people whose bodies and lands this church is erected and constructed upon. But the cries of indigenous people and their descendants who are still here all around the country reverberate throughout the body and soul of the church, bidding the church to feel the ache of the colonial wound, move its heart to compassion or to confession and repentance, and to energize the church's hands and feet to respond with meaningful and ongoing action. So the reports that are coming before the General Assembly this session, in the 224th General Assembly, their reference numbers are 095 and 096, the Native American Coordinating Council report, and the Native American Church Properties report. These reports are a map of sorts that seek to guide the commissioners of this General Assembly into a course of action that can begin to address and redress the devastation that has been wrought among indigenous peoples in this land. So the key words here are action and begin. Our report is not an end. These are conversations, and Native people have been working on this for centuries. For the last 3 decades, there have been numerous reports brought forward by Native people. The 1979 Churchwide Policy Statement for working with Native communities, the Comprehensive Strategy for Native Ministries with Native Americans in 2000, 2018, the Doctrine of Discovery report. A lot has been written, and today we have the chance to hear a little bit from some of the people who've been involved in creating these, who've been involved in advocating for the recommendations that we are including in the 2 reports that are coming before the General Assembly this term. So what we hope is that this is a way of beginning a new kind of story, a new kind of relationship between the Presbyterian Church USA and Native congregations and Native nations more broadly. And we need the church to listen, to take our words to heart, to see the fractured relationship between the PCUSA and indigenous peoples, and to take real, meaningful, and long-term action. So that's what brings us here today, and we're grateful to have the chance to talk a little bit together. What we're going to do going in our session in the next few minutes is we have a few panelists who are joining us today, and we will proceed with kind of a question and answer time to orient us to some of the recommendations that we are offering today. So first of all, I'd like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. I think I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Anthony Trujillo. I'm a candidate for ordination in the New York City Presbytery and a PhD candidate in American Studies at Harvard University. And let's see, let's go to Irv, if you're there.
Hello, and I'm glad to join you. I am living in Puyallup, Washington, which is on the south side of Tacoma. I pastor a church here 1/4 time that's Native American, and it is on the Puyallup Indian Reservation, which is actually surrounded by the city of Tacoma. And I'm 3/4 time associate for Native American intercultural congregational support with the racial equity and women's intercultural ministry. So I'm deployed staff, so I live here in the beautiful Northwest. I am Pima, Tohono O'odham, and Nez Perce tribes. So I'm descended from 3. I am enrolled in the Pima tribe, also called the Gila River Indian Community. I serve this General Assembly as resource staff for the 2 reports that Anthony mentioned. And so I look forward to a long weekend, actually.
Fern,
Kathy.
you
Well, my
introduce
relatives.
yourself.
Pardon me?
Go ahead.
Did you want me to speak next?
Yes, please. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Yes, my name is Fern Cloud. I am Dakota. I am enrolled in Assistant Wapton Dakota Oyate in Peaches, South Dakota on the Lake Traverse Reservation. I am currently a CRE and stated clerk, a CRE for PCUSA Presbyterian Church on the Upper Sioux Dakota community near Granite Falls, Minnesota. I am also the stated clerk of Dakota Presbytery and the treasurer. So I serve a lot of hats. I am the moderator of the Native American Consulting Committee and co-moderator on this committee called Native American Coordinating Committee. So you're going to hear a lot about from us, this GA. So I'm happy to be on this forum this morning. Thank you.
All right. Reverend Hollie.
Akwe, I'm Hollie Haile Thompson, and I am a Shinnecock, and I'm talking to you from Akwesasne, and I'm a member of NAC, and I'm a member of REAC, and during the assembly, I'll be a resource person and an advocate. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll begin first. So I also need to say my role. So I'm from Okiawinga Pueblo in New Mexico. And I'm a resource person for these reports in the GA. And I'm a co-moderator for the Native American Coordinating Council. The first question I'd like to ask our panelists is, how long has the Presbyterian Church been in your native homeland, and what has been the impact on Native people in your community?
I can go first.
All right.
Again, I'm descended from the Pima and Tohono O'odham. Those are very close tribes. The language is very similar in southern Arizona. And the first Catholic missionaries arrived in southern Arizona, where these tribes are located, in the 1600s. I'm also descended from the Nez Perce tribe of north central Idaho. And missionaries first arrived among the Nez Perce in 1835. They were Congregationalists, and eventually they became Presbyterians. Both the Pima and the Nez Perce people continue a legacy of Presbyterian ministries on their reservations, and each of them have several churches on those reservations. I am actually a product of First Indian Presbyterian Church of Kamiah, Idaho. My family has been worshiping and attending that church even before it was built and dedicated in 1871. So my Nez Perce heritage has been Christian for quite some time. My father, who was Pima Tohono O'odham, was also a Presbyterian minister, as am I.
All right, who'd like to go next?
I'll go ahead and go next, if I may. I'm a blood member of the Shinnecock Nation, and work began with us in 1640. I like to say that nice and slow because we're in 2020. You can say that fast, but you have to say 1640 very slowly. And that's 380 years ago. Our people welcomed a boat full of unexpected refugees who were hungry enough and who were uncomfortable enough in that boat to inspire the solitary female among them to exclaim when they arrived, "For conscience sake, we're on dry land." Well, these were English, and they were hiding from the Dutch, and they had floated over from Lynn, Massachusetts. And soon the Reverend Abraham Pearson penned the first document effectively claiming Shinnecock land as their own. Our Shinnecock Church is the oldest National Board of Missions church in the Presbyterian denomination. In 1759, the first Native American was ordained in our history, and he was a Mohegan Native. He was Samsamakum, and he was married to a Montaukett woman, and he served in congregations on Long Island and in what is now Connecticut, and among the Brotherton Indians, and who, with some of the Oneidas, they went to Wisconsin. But look up Samsamakum, and you can see how poorly he was treated. But my people then were Presbyterian in this country before the denomination even existed in this country. And people say, why do you hang around the church? Well, we hang around the church because we care about our calling. We care about making things better. We care about justice. We care about our neighbors, even when they don't seem to care about us. We care about the earth. We care about 7 generations. And we care about all faiths. And we're here to say we are patient and we will not disappear, but we will not be silent. We will commit to seeking justice and loving goodness and walking humbly on the good road of life with whoever will walk in that peaceful way. Our language outlawed. We have been historically treated with contempt by our neighbors, many of whom are Presbyterian, and that has not changed significantly. And we were relegated to the neck, which is a little portion of land pushed off of our 3,600 acres. And of course, they had already taken the rest of that. But in 1859, we were relegated to a place that is now about 800 acres. And there are roads, Westgate Road and Eastgate Road, and that's not supposed to be picturesque. It's supposed to indicate that there were gates on those roads to keep the Indians in a certain place, while the rest of the world zoomed by and taking us from our sacred Shinnecock Hills, where human remains of our ancestors are unearthed every month with regularity, and there is no outside law to address that and to try and prevent that from happening. So this is who we are, where we are, 380 years. I think we need to have a two-way conversation with the Presbyterian Church so we can effectively address a lot of the issues with which we have lived for a long, long time. Tabane.
Thank you, Holly. Fern, another question, same question to you. How long has the church, the PCUSA, been in your native homeland, and what has been the impact on Native people and your community?
Yes, thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Holly, for that very good explanation. It resonated with me in our where we are in Native American ministries within the PCUSA. In Minnesota, the missionaries visited us. First contact was it was in the early 1700s, late 1600s actually. And they started to get organized under the leadership of the Presbyterian minister, John Williamson. And my great-great-grandfather was the Dakota chief here. He was the Bedewa chief in this area of St. Paul, Minneapolis. His village was here. So we've experienced for many years, my family, with relationships with the Presbyterians. We have a pretty good story, actually, of the first missionaries that came to the Dakota people. They lived with us. They actually wrote our alphabet and dictionaries, a Dakota dictionary. They transformed our language into written word for us. And they allowed us to be who we are. And they focused on our spirituality rather than all the religious do's and don'ts. I think this lasted for many years. We have, in spite of our horrendous history in Minnesota, Minnesota is the place where there was a Dakota uprising and the largest mass hanging of 58 people in United States history. In spite of that, the missionaries went to the prisoners. John Williamson, there was others. Robert Hinman was Episcopal minister, but they ministered to the prisoners. One of our ministers, Reverend Dr. Clifford Chunku, translated the letters of the prisoners that were allowed to write letters. And, you know, they supported us. Actually, the missionaries, the Presbyterian missionaries, supported us in the early days. We had 21 churches in Dakota Presbytery. It's because of many of them are in disarray. You know, because of their condition, which strikes me very. I don't know. It's just like I shake my head. SMH, they'd say, is some of those churches are in the same condition when the missionaries first came to visit us. I mean, that is ridiculous. Many of them don't have, you know, the luxuries of being upgraded over the years. But I think our relationship started to wind down when the PCUSA started getting organized, and it changed in the 1900s. Now we're becoming heathens when we were once looked at as a people with culture and language, and we're honored for that. Then we became heathens when the church started organizing, and you know, all our cultures, you know, we had to burn a lot of our cultural regalia, cultural items, anything that, you know, and we were, you know, like every other Native in America, we were forced to start now learning English. So it's been a, you know, our relationship with the church didn't continue that. It started on a high and it headed straight down to a low. And today, as a minister of the gospel for our Dakota community and working with the PCUSA, you know, we're trying to build bridges. We're trying to go back and to that wonderful relationship that we started out having in early on, first contact. So that's my story. I hope that adds a little insight. You know, it's nothing is all bad. It's just the way things go sometimes with the culture, the mood of the dominant society. And so right now the mood is unity among people of color. So we want to embrace that. You know, take this back to our churches, and we have a. Our view on life is a circle of life, and that we are all related. We are all one. And So we've always felt that way. And I think John Williamson, he actually understood that. He understood our spirituality to be so in balance and harmony with the gospel message that he decided that, hey, you know, these people are people who love God. You know, we just need to help them through this, the oncoming of what you call civilized life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fern. Irv, Fern mentioned the state of Native churches. You've been heavily involved as the Native American Intercultural Support Associate. You've visited many of these churches. Can you just give us a sense of what those churches are like, the state of the buildings and the properties? Because that's one of the issues, the pressing issues on for the GA this term.
Yes. I've been the associate for Native Ministries since June of 2013. So I've been doing this for 7 years this month. And the conditions that I have seen in the churches that I've visited have varied greatly from very good to very bad. This church property report highlights, not highlights, but it shows clearly the current condition of all of our 92 Native American congregational buildings. And it reveals those conditions very well, some professionally well, exactly. Some of those congregations have been able to partner with other Presbyterian churches or groups within their presbyteries or around the country. And so they have been able to receive funds and volunteers to help them to repair their church buildings. Others, however, may be a little more remote, remotely located, and this kind of partnership doesn't work as well, but it is not impossible either. As the associate, I get a lot of the phone calls from churches, presbyteries, different groups, asking about information where they might be able to get a hold of a congregation that might be in need of some work, that they could come and bring a work group, usually during the summer, late spring, early summer. And so I ask them what geographical area are they interested in looking at, and so then I can make those initial contacts with church leaders first, and then kind of introduce them to what's going on. Sometimes they've said no. Many times they say, please, yes, give me the information and we'll work. So it has worked in that way. But recently, those calls have been getting less and less, unfortunately. There's a for instance in this, and that's Grand Canyon Presbytery. They have used funds to help these kinds of repairs for the Native congregations in Grand Canyon Presbytery, which there are around 26 in their bounds, using funds that came from departing congregations that have left the denomination. And so they've been able to earmark those funds, for instance, for use helping repair some of those congregations, those church buildings in their bounds. In fact, this overture was birthed by Grand Canyon Presbytery. They started working with the Navajo churches and assessing their conditions and all that. And that's when they realized that that it was going to be quite a task to undertake the whole project. And so it went national after that. The Presbyterian Foundation has also set up a fund which folks can contribute to, both churches, communities, and individuals can contribute to. And that is advertised on my website for the Native American Intercultural Congregational Support. And it'll help some of these congregations with these kinds of repairs. Some repairs are simple. They could be done in less than a day, while others are really, really extensive. And they're going to require large amounts of funds and large amounts of labor to accomplish, such as roofing, heating systems, installing cement sidewalks, even parking lots, cement, in the front of some of the churches have sand or dirt in front of their church building. And so people with mobility issues and wheelchairs and walkers, it's very, very hard for them to get into some of these churches. And so having a concrete large sidewalk or a concrete small parking lot made out of concrete that the folks can handicap accessible can park in front of the church is could be very helpful in some of these situations. Some of these congregations also that are Native American have done a very good job in upkeep of their buildings, and they do the best that they can with what they have. But raising funds is always a struggle in the Native American community where economic conditions are not the best. But we don't have doctors and lawyers and professionals who attend our churches like many Presbyterians do. And so what comes in the offering plate is basically it. People do the best they can. When there's a need, people give from the heart. When there's a need, they'll plan maybe a potluck dinner that is funded. And so you come in and you put your donation in a can, and then you have your meal. And so, like I said, people give in different ways in our congregations. And so the idea of how Native American people give and what resources they can give is not the same as in most Presbyterian congregations, because our people give from the heart. If they have huckleberries or salmon or venison in the freezer and there's a need, hey, we're going to have this dinner to help fund such and such, or some families in need, then they bring out the best, and they cook it up and make that part, so that in that way they're giving. Other people clean the church. Other people do various things around the buildings to help church in different ways. When they don't have they have the cash, as it were, to give to the church. They give in other ways, and that's one thing that is really not understood in the national church, is that, well, why don't they fix their own churches? I even had somebody tell me at the General Assembly the last time, are we fixing churches or are we preserving museums? And he said it not in a very nice way. So, I told him, I said, I got up to the podium and I said, you know what, these are all the only churches these folks have in their communities. And they're going to attend them whether the roof's falling in or not. But that's all they got. And so you call it a museum if you want, but to them it's home. And so that's the cultural disparity between the Presbyterian Church, the larger church, and the Native American congregations is huge, as many have been saying already. It can be bridged, however, and just takes a little bit more understanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Irvin. I just want to do a quick screen share of the slide that shows Native American congregations across the United States. So these are where there are current Native PCUSA congregations. This is the slide that Irvin sent me a little bit earlier, just to give you a sense. But the Presbyterian Church USA has a footprint in all of these places, and that's an important part of this as well. I want to move forward to do a quick time check. We are getting, I think we have about 10 minutes or so left. There we go. The next question, I guess, would be maybe just a question for both Fern and for Hollie. And this has to do with the Native American Coordinating Council report. We've put forward a lot of recommendations together. We've worked on these. If there is one recommendation that really just speaks to you and your community, can you talk just a bit about that? it's helpful for people to, and every single one of these recommendations has a story. There's something behind it. But if you could just give us a sense of one of them that really stands out to you. Well, Hollie, we can start with you if you're ready for that. And you.
I focused in on the fifth recommendation, which is about encouraging congregations and mid-councils and other groups in the church to develop partnerships with Native people. And I take that to encourage a new kind of relationship for Presbyterians and the Native people with whom they are neighbors, whether they recognize that or not, or can see them or not, or whether they are waiting for them to disappear or not, but a new relationship that includes respect, because we have found that many of the early contact didn't have anything to do with respect. It had to do with other things, but it didn't have to do with respect of the Native peoples of that place. But respect also for our relationship to our land. They say that the Shinnecock people have been there in the Shinnecock Hills since at least 1043 BC. I say that all the time. David was doing something to someone in Israel in 1043 BC while my Shinnecock people were in their sacred hills. And so there has to be an acknowledgement and a respect of that, of our spiritual practices, which may not just be the doxology in English. It may be more than that. Respect for our culture and our language and our theology. There is such a thing as Native American theology, but we never get to that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the relationship that needs to be formed between the laws of the land of the United States and the law of Native people and their sovereignty, and what kind of rights are given or taken away, educational opportunities, all of this stuff. You have even seen in the brief months of COVID, which have taken a tremendous toll also on Native people, Navajo Nation. There became a standoff. Certainly Fern can speak more clearly to this than I can, but a standoff between a governor telling a Native nation that they could not control who comes in and out of their territory. Well, Shinnecocks, of course, won't stand for that. Akwesasne won't stand for that, and the South Dakota people won't stand for that. So these are actions and things that go on based on disrespect, and everyone who's in charge of all of these outside things call themselves a Christian. Well, that is obviously a stretch, but let's see some new relationships and the will. The only thing we lack is the will. So maybe we can have the will to make things better and to build a new relationship. Thank you.
Thank you, Hollie. Fern, can you speak to one of the recommendations that really resonates with you and with the communities that you work with?
Yes, actually, as a stated clerk of a presbytery that has Native churches, we have a handful of ministers. Most of our ministers are teaching elders, were trained at the Cook Seminary in Tempe, Arizona. Of course, that closed. So we don't have a place to send our those interested, our inquirers, we call them. And most of the clergy in our church and all the churches in the PCUSA are being run by CREs. And so, the great need that we have as ministers to our own people is support from the larger church. None of our ministers get a salary or have pensions. We all have to just make do. But, we have great spirituality, as Hollie mentioned. We have our local churches have history. They have memories. It's a place where healing has taken place. And so it's very important, but we need leadership. And without that leadership, we just, no, just anybody can go in there, although there's a lot of qualified people, but we're within the PCUSA and there's training. And so we really advocate the church to help us out in this great need, especially today with the COVID-19 and our communities need hope. They need faith, right now more than ever, I think. It's another battle that we're facing. So, and another, I just want to put a punchline in here. I'm an advocate for the Native American missing and murdered Indigenous women. I've worked as executive director for the Minnesota Dakota sexual violence, domestic violence. So I'm very in on this, and we've seen it. And right now, our churches in Montana are facing this. The ministers call me, because I'm the state clerk, and they call me and they, share with me that their congregation is going through, women are going missing, and they're asking for prayer. I mean, what can you do, but I mean, prayer is powerful. But nevertheless, it's a great ongoing, devastating thing that is happening throughout the country, because that pipeline is going through our reservations. So I want to thank you all for listening today. We have so many issues, but we wanted to share a few with you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Fern. And as Fern mentioned, I know that one of the priorities for the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship, and for many who are watching today, is divestment from fossil fuels. That is so related and ties right into some of the recommendations that we are making, especially with missing and murdered Indigenous women, where these pipelines and extractive practices, extractive economy of mining of different types really impact Native communities and Native women and children in particular. We are just right at time here. Want to share just a couple slides that give you some resources and some steps that you all can take. Again, I want to thank everybody for joining. I'm going to share my screen, and here are some resources that can help you if you want to learn more. First and foremost, I would say read through the two reports, 009 or 095 and 096. Make sure that you are really well familiar with both of those reports and the recommendations and the assessments that have been done there. These are some additional resources that are just, the list is deep. The 1979 Churchwide Policy Statement on Native American Ministries that I mentioned earlier, the 2000 Mission and Ministry of Native American Peoples report, and the 2018 Doctrine of Discovery report. June Lorenzo is one of the women who is unable to be with us here at this time, but she's been heavily involved in, particularly in the Doctrine of Discovery report, but for decades. And a lot of the work here owes a lot to June's, everything that's coming before owes a lot to June's work. So that is that. Next, share these resources with commissioners you are connected with, contact resource people and advocate with questions. All of us here, Fern, Stated Clerk Fern Cloud, Reverend Hollie Haile Thompson, Reverend Irvin Porter, myself, and June Lorenzo are all resource people and advocates for these reports. Contact us with questions if you have them, please. During the plenary, we will be available to be called on. So this is an opportunity to center Native voices in those conversations. And we just ask that you sincerely engage in the discussion. This, as Hollie mentioned, this is a two-way conversation. It's a dialogue. It's not just a one-way thing. So we thank you so much for tuning in, for joining with us. As you can tell, there's a lot more to say, but these just give you some of a few stories that illuminate the work that has gone into these reports and the recommendations we're bringing before the GA. Thanks again to Timothy and to Emily for hosting this session today.